Ladies and gentlemen, this is to introduce my good friend John Taft. John is the CEO of RBC, that's Royal Bank of Canada, Wealth Management in the United States. John has written an excellent book, a very important one, and he's edited a second book. But of some interest is that John is descended from our former president, William Howard Taft. John's first book was called Stewardship.
Good morning, Steve. And one of the interesting parts of my great-grandfather's legacy, of course, is that he was the governor of the Philippines and was a champion for Philippine independence and a great friend of the Philippine people throughout his career in public service, which spanned more than 30 years.
John, could you give us just your take on why is stewardship important and what needs to be done to have a sustainable financial system for the world?
Well, stewardship is a core principle that I think should underpin not just the financial services industry, where I've spent my entire career, but any corporate enterprise. And what stewardship really is, it is a way of looking at the world and a way of looking at what you do every day in terms of your responsibility to others, both those who are alive on the planet today and those in future generations. What happened in the 1950s and 1960s is somehow the task and the responsibility of business people, people active in the capitalist economy and in corporate enterprises, were told that their job had to do only with enriching and building wealth for the shareholders of the enterprise they were working for. Well, that got us into a lot of trouble, and we've all lived through that in our lifetimes. And today, it's hard to find a corporate executive who would embrace that point of view, most often associated with Milton Friedman. Today, corporate executives in the world talk about their responsibilities in terms of being a steward of the interests of various constituencies, customers and clients, employees, shareholders, yes, and the communities in which their clients, customers, employees, and shareholders live. And that core principle of stewardship really gives meaning and purpose to corporate activity. And we have lost touch with that in the past, and we need to stay connected to that in order to do the things that society expects us to do.
What about financial services? We've just seen in China the meltdown, I suppose, of major equity stock markets. Can stewardship actually effectively be applied to financial institutions?
Well, I think stewardship is and should be the core principle underlying financial services broadly defined, i.e. financial markets, financial services firms, the financial systems that connect today all economies in the global economy. And if you go to the People's Dictionary, Wikipedia, and look up stewardship, you will find it defined as responsibly managing the affairs for others. And that really is what we should do, responsibly manage assets and enterprises that have been entrusted to our care. But we've lost touch with that principle. And I think one of the reasons for that is that over the years, financial services started to focus on activities that were just about making money and got away from activities that were about helping real people in the real world accomplish real goals. To the extent we focus on our clients and customers, we tend to stay true to stewardship principles. To the extent we focus on making money, we tend to lose touch with those principles.
Your second book was entitled A Force for Good, that finance is a force for good, and you had a number of very distinguished people contribute their thoughts. What are some of the more important, more impressive ideas that are in your book that could be applied in a country like Thailand, or any country really?
Well, actually it was a very interesting undertaking for me. I learned a lot because we had some of the foremost experts in financial services in the world, from Robert Shiller, the Nobel laureate, to Jack Bogle, the founder of the Index Fund and Vanguard, to Charlie Ellis, to Mary Shapiro and Sheila Bair, and others of that quality and stature contribute chapters to the book. All of them having to do with what needs to be done to have the financial system contribute more consistently to positive social outcomes than it has in the recent past? How can we make it a force for good? And there's a lot of technical blocking and tackling that's described in the book. What do we need to do in terms of market structure reforms? What do we need to do to prevent systemic risk meltdowns, which we've done successfully since the financial crisis? What do we need to do to make sure that shadow banking doesn't supplant regulated sectors of the financial services as sources of risk? But what I found is that what people really wanted to talk about was the fact that the whole notion of what we want from our economic system, from capitalism, which, let's face it, is the dominant economic system in the world today, the whole notion of what we want from capitalism is up for grabs today. It was thrown into question by the financial crisis. Before the financial crisis, we thought we knew what we want. We wanted growth at any and all costs. The financial crisis showed us that, in fact, that isn't what we want. We want something else. We haven't decided what that is, but we're right in the middle of a fascinating discussion that includes the UN goals for sustainable development about what we want from our economic system. And my goal was to contribute to that conversation. I don't think there's any more important conversation going on in the world today. From where I sit, from what I heard people say, we want growth, but we want growth informed by stewardship principles. We want growth in the service of equality. We want growth in the service of sustainability. We want growth in the service of intergenerational equity. Yes, we want growth, but not growth that turns the planet into a wasteland that can no longer support human life, that beggars our children's generations, and it causes huge disparities in wealth between the top and the bottom portions of our population. We want responsible growth. And the question is, exactly what does that look like and how do we get there? It's an exciting time, and the conversation about that is an incredibly important conversation.